the Instructor podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor podcast Green Room edition. This is a show where we cover all the latest news and hot topics from within our little driving instructor world. As always, I am your mediocre host, Terry Cook, and I'm delighted to be here. But you'll be delighted it's not just me, because I am joined by the ever wonderful, the co-founder of Driving Instructor Trainers Collective. I don't know why I forgot that then. And also the founder of Theory Test Explained, Chri Bensted. How are we doing, Chris?
So, yes, all is good. It's lovely to see you again. It feels like ages.
It's been about a month. Right, and it's been a week. We recorded last week for the 6 for 60.
The 6 for 60, yeah, but there's lots of faces on the screen. I don't get your HD loveliness. So, yeah, it's all good.
Okie dokie. And we're also joined by one of my lovely premium members who is sitting in the background, who I've charged today with trying to put us off with his chatter in the chat box. So, yes, Kev Lyons, good luck today. I want to start today by taking you a little bit behind the scenes, actually, because usually how we record these shows or we start these shows is I do quite a bit of planning. And I'll be scanned through all the news. I'll look for key topics and key talking points, and I'll map it out, and then I'll send it to Chris. And he usually doesn't read it because he doesn't bother with this stuff. He prefers to do it off the cuff. But I still send it to him because it reassures me knowing it's there if he wants it. But today, my brain hasn't been playing ball recently, a bit of a funk going on, struggling for topics. So I threw it to Chris, and he came back with some excellent ones. So Chris is going to be choosing some topics later on today, but we do have some news. And I think this month has been a really lovely month for kind of positive and warm industry news. I actually think it's been quite a good start to the year for positive, warm industry news, even though there's been some negative as well. And I want to start with the ADI walkback. Now, we're not going to talk about this every month, Chris, because, we're not doing an ADI walkback feature, but I am keen to see how you think it's growing. So for anyone that doesn't know, just tell us briefly what it's about and just tell us how you think it's going a couple of months in.
So ADI walkback is a mental health and physical health moment every month. And that's all it is a moment. It's an opportunity for you to take a moment, to meet with other people for a moment, and just to explore having a wander and having a chat. It's pouring really, really, really heavily. You can just go for a coffee. I have no issues. There's no rules. Everyone seems to be walking heavily in the rain, walking in the heavy rain, and and it's like, go for a coffee. It'd be much nicer. So it came off the back of talking to another driving instructor and deciding it'd be great to get out the car and have a wander. And then said, let's do it nationally. And it is growing. It's been doing more people doing it each time. It's on the second Tuesday of every month. At your discretion. Stick a poster up in your test centre. There's one on the DITC website, and you can go and have a look. I think the important thing is it's out there. But for me, that it's all about opportunities. And life is all about opportunities. So there is an opportunity for people who need it to connect with other driving instructors. And you've got a really good excuse. If it's you and there isn't one locally, stick a poster up because someone else will be in the same boat. So there's a bit of magnetic attraction going on. There's a bit of a join the dots opportunity. And I'm really interested in how this conversation will be in a year's time, as to whether there's more regular events or whether it's just kind of had its moment and disappeared. I hope it doesn't, because the one we've done locally, it's the only one I can really comment about. I get some lovely pictures. I know that I live in not nearly such a nice area as everybody else, apparently, because there's some lovely views that are coming through on photos. Our best view locally was over the top. I don't know if I should say this on a road safety and driving instructor type environment podcast, but bridge going over the M25 and two unnamed driving instructors pumping their arms, getting the lorries to beep their horns and flash their lights. And they were like children on the bridge. That was the highlight. But we had a group of four of us, all with hoods in the rain, refusing to put them up because we were men. and going around in having a walk in the woods. It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? But it was great, and everybody really enjoyed it, and they've all said, yeah, we'll be there next time, which we appreciate. Is Easter. We're going to stick with continuity, second Tuesday. If you can't make Easter because you're away, go for a walk while you're away. It's all good.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think this is one of my favourite kind of creations within the industry since I've been here. I even if it isn't bought into by everyone, which is frustrating me, and even if, like you said, in a year's time, even if it's still not bought into by a large number, I still think just what a lovely thing to create. And this month I went up to Newcastle to meet Les Hopkinson. We had a lovely walk along the Tyne, as lovely as a walk by the Tyne can be. But no, it was genuinely a lovely walk. We had a drink and we walked back. We got our picture taken on a bridge as well, but it was over the Tyne. I don't know which bridge it was. He told me, but I can't remember. But yeah, this is me adapting it to what suits me, because one of the things I realised for my mental health is that with what I do, a lot of it is at home. It's in front of the computer, it's recording, it's editing, it's writing, it's all this stuff. I need to get out and meet people in real life more. As much as with the driving instructors and I meet the students, it's not the same. So I'm kind of using this as an excuse to go out and meet people. I'm going to a different city every time. I think it's not been confirmed yet, but I think I'm in Sheffield next month, which is a bit close to home. But either way, so that's where I'm taking it. And I think that, like you said, if everyone makes it their own and makes it into something and just shares it, I think it's a good way to build that community as well.
Yes, and what I love, just as the creator, bloke with a random idea, and Dan Hose is the instructor I was with, and I always feel the need to name check him because it was a conversation between two of us. It's letting that little thing go and just seeing what comes of it all. That I take immense satisfaction in a tiny little thing and seeing what happens. Just that little bit of see where the ripples go. And I'm confident that we will not hear about the best bits, because the best bits will be the people that really needed something and it was there at that moment in time. And we won't hear about those. I might get a private message, but I won't be sharing them. Or someone will give me a call and just say, just to let you know. But we won't hear the best ones. And knowing that is enough.
And do you know what? I'm going to touch on that for a second longer. What you said about having the idea and throwing it out there. And I think that's the thing. We've spoken quite a lot over the last few months about originality and copying, which I keep seeing posts on Facebook that copying, someone copying the other. Anyway, and it's those original ideas. They don't always work, but the one I had this year was after someone told me that it's impossible to make an original driving instructor podcast now. I created the 1 Minute Driving Instructor Tips podcast. And I didn't really expect that to go anywhere. I thought, well, I don't know if anyone will listen, but now that's getting almost as many downloads as the Instructor. It's been sponsored by Vehicle Smart, which is, for me, a really impressive sponsor and a bit out-of-the-box sponsor as well. Get some really lovely feedback on that. I'm not sure all of my tips are the best tips for everyone else, but they work for me. And if it gets people thinking, then that's great. So I just want to encourage anyone that has that idea to put it out there and see what happens. The other thing I'm going to mention, just coming back to walk back for a second, because my brain is frazzled at the minute, so I keep forgetting stuff. And I think over the past month, Chris, I've told you I were going to send you something 3 times and haven't, so I'll mention it publicly. The May ADI walk back coincides with the Road Peace Challenge. Now, the Road Peace Challenge is walking 1,766 miles collectively within the challenge, which is the number of people that died in 2022. And the reason why we got in 2022 is because at the time the date wasn't available for 2023. So 1,766 people died on UK's roads in 2022. And as I said, the ADI walkback falls in with that week. So if there were ever a time for driving instructors to go, let's do something with Road Peace, it will be that week. And then, as I've said, I've been meaning to connect you two for a month and haven't. So here's my public acknowledgement. When I go to edit this, I will know to do it. But yeah, so that'll be the thing I'd chuck out there. Anything else you want to touch on with the walkback, Chris?
No, just if anyone's not sure, get in touch. The one thing that has become very apparent, and I knew it already, but everyone else is now cottoning on to the fact, I don't do geography. The places that you say that you're going to go to, I haven't got a clue where they are. I know they exist. So don't expect me to know if there's one nearby, but we can go through a list together and we can check. If not, just say check your local test centre. Most test centres have been really helpful, except my own, which is ironic. And I know the LDTM really well, but she's a stickler for the rules. So we're working on the DBSA, who are now authorising the poster officially. We just got to wait until there's someone there to do it. So we're working on that. So yeah, get in touch and we'll get you sorted. You only need you to start.
Yeah, exactly. Worst case scenario, bang a post up on Facebook. I'm going for a walk here on this day. If anyone wants to join me, I'm leaving at this time.
Yeah.
Let's move on then, because March also, more positivity, consisted of Driving Instructor Day. March the 16th, the third annual Driving Instructor Day. And it grew this year. I speak about ideas and throwing things out there. Driving Instructor Day was my idea. It's not my thing by any stretch. It was never meant to be a Terry Cook production. It was, let's have this day to be positive. And after this year, I kind of get the feeling like if I didn't promote it all next year, it would still be a thing. And I think that's where I want it to be. I will also promote it because why not? But I think you look at this year, we had people celebrating it in Switzerland, obviously, with Stefan Plus, who's my European correspondent. We had people in the States and Australia and all over. And I was about to say it was big in the States. It wasn't big in the States. There was 10 people that shared it. But that's quite impressive to get 10 people in the States sharing this, 10 instructors specifically. And the other thing I liked this year was the people that were sharing it was sort of shared from your local sort of news outlets. It was Road Piece asked me to write a blog for them, and then they shared some stuff about it. Also, this is my favorite one, WeBuyAnyCar.com. And what I liked about that was that they didn't share it. They wrote their own post. And I thought they've taken time to, and they asked it was, would you still pass the theory test? So they're actually kind of engaged it a little bit. And I just thought, what a lovely thing. So yeah, really, really pleased with Driving Instructor Day this year. Chris, what were your thoughts?
I was less positive because I was supposed to be going to the dyslexia show. That's what, it coincided. I was really excited about my road trip. I was going to go down and meet with some instructors, and my car failed its MOT on the Friday. So it was slightly annoying. I decided, it was probably best not to drive down there. But outside of that, the vibe that was going on, I took the time that I would have spent driving down there to shout lots to my local groups and such. And a lot of people going, well, I'm just working. Brilliant. Well done for celebrating being a driving instructor. It kind of works. But there were people that went out for a coffee, went and met with some other instructors. And then I got to finish the day with a lovely bunch of friends answering questions from you. So, that was I really enjoed that. There was something about it. And I don't know if it was because it was on Driving Instructor Day that we all kind of just felt there was a bit of a thing. But it's a spotlight. It's a highlight to things that are going on anyway, but it is really nice to kind of have a name to it. And I agree. I think if you suddenly disappear tomorrow, it will have cost me a lot of money to make it happen. But if you disappeared tomorrow, then it would be continuing. We'd rename it, obviously, like the Terry Cook Driving Instructor Day, just so it was a tribute day, so we can remember you.
If you're naming me something, I don't want the name Driving Instructor Day. I want something impressive, please. I'll have a statue.
You want a statue for the founder of Driving Instructor?
No, but just for me. Nothing to do with Driving Instructor Day. Just a statue for me, please.
We need to put something on it. We can't just put Terry Cook.
It was awesome. mediocre and awesome. That's what we want.
The person who turns up on Chris Bensted podcast, it would be the...
Anyway, the... But you know what? It's very much like the ADI walk back. It doesn't matter what you do on driving instructor day. I would love it if just people acknowledge it. Now, if you don't want to acknowledge it, there was one negative comment from a driving instructor that I saw, stood out like a sore thumb for two reasons. One being that you notice the negative comments more than the positive, unfortunately. The other being that it was the only negative one I saw. Everyone else was really positive. I'm not going to name the guy, giving away it was a guy. But it was just like, this is pointless. I'm like, okay, cool. On your merry way you go. You know, if you do not want to acknowledge or celebrate, maybe that's the wrong word, driving instructor day, then don't. That's completely fine. You don't have to. But it's an opportunity there for people to be positive and do something, whether that's going out for coffee, whether it's arranging a team meeting for your franchise, whether it's just sharing a post, like a good story, or just saying, you know, happy driving instructor day or whatever. I just think it's a really good opportunity just for a bit of acknowledgement for what we do and seeing people like Road Peace acknowledge that. And there were others that I've forgotten, but, you know, there were some that stood out more than others. So, yeah, I thought I was really chuffed with that. But there was another day this March, and it was International Women's Day, which I'm not going to talk about too much, but I do want to give a shout out because Laura Joyce hosted the podcast for me on International Women's Day at short notice, obviously, about 4 days before. I went, I've had an idea. Will you do this? And she got Debbie Hudson and a friend of the show, Sarah Baldock, to record an episode. She told me not to say this, but screw it. She can fall out with me later. Didn't record the first one properly, so I had to do it again. So they actually did two podcasts for International Women's Day, and annoyingly, got higher downloads than a lot of my normal episodes, which is slightly depressing. But either way, big shout out to those guys. Did you listen to that one, Chris?
I haven't. No, it is on my to-do list, but there's lots on my to-do list. No, but I knowing them, absolutely, it'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
But do you know, I'm going to boycott it until they actually meet me for the cup of coffee that I keep being promised, because they're only down the road.
There you go. If they're listening, I'm sure that you'll be getting invited for a cup of coffee sometime soon. Now, you can hold them sat in the same way you can now hold me to you, connecting you to Road Piece. But there you go. But yeah, no, big thank you, Slow Guys. It was a really interesting episode. I enjoyed the perspective and the things that we're talking about. Go back and check that out if you haven't already. If you're wondering if I'll be getting a bloke on for International Men's Day, which is in November, I can fill that slot quite nicely, so we don't need to worry about that. I also wanted to touch on a little bit on season 7 of the podcast, which we are currently in the midst of. So episode 1 was with Rebecca Morris from Road Peace. Episode 2 was Gemma Briggs from the Open University, but we're talking about distracted driving. And episode 3, so if you're listening to this podcast, this will have gone out on Saturday the 30th, and episode 3 will go out on Saturday the 31st. And that is with Sharon Huddleston of Caitlin's Campaign. And Caitlin's Campaign came from Sharon's daughter, Caitlin, who tragically lost her life in a collision back in 2017. And Caitlin's Campaign was formed then. So 3 very different episodes to kick off this series. Now, I don't want to dwell on this too much because people can go and listen, but I was quite nervous about this season because it's the first time I'll have ever fully themed a season. And also it's focused on road safety, which isn't sexy for driving instructors. And I spoke to Josh Holleran on his podcast recently, and I asked it was going, and the phrase I used is better than expected, but not as good as I hoped. And I think that's probably a really good description of how it's going so far. Chris, I'm just keen to know, what do you think of it so far?
I think you are tackling the really difficult parallel that nobody so far has seemed to be able to crack, which is that we are in road safety, but we're not necessarily joined up and connected with road safety for reasons I'm not sure why. We've spoken about it a little bit since, mainly because it pushed some of my buttons and annoyed me. And it shouldn't, but you just kind of think, I spend all this time trying to work towards stuff, and I'm not getting anywhere with it. And it should be absolutely a natural syzygy between the two sides, and everything should just line up and it should work perfect. And it doesn't. I find it really annoying because it doesn't make sense, and I like stuff that makes sense. But I think what you do is great. I think it's going to be a real challenge, because otherwise someone would have done it already. It's road safety. That's the whole point of why we're here. So if there was an easy answer, someone would have done it. I have absolute faith, as anyone listening will also have, in the fact that if anyone can draw that out of a podcast, it's in good hands. So, I'd look forward to hearing how it goes. And as a standalone thing, they'll be awesome anyway. What I would love to see is some kind of traction, some kind of, it just lines things up enough that people go, okay, so what I was looking for, you've just laid it out for me in the way that, the Instructor podcast and yourself do really well, where I can come along and I can go, now I know. And now I can connect. And I really hope that's going to become something, again, like we were saying before, even if it's just that little, that tiny little thing that just helps lead to something else for one person. Brilliant. Hopefully it will be more. Hopefully we'll get dialogue going. And yeah, there's plenty to challenge. I don't know. So I think sometimes we're as instructors, we're the wrong people, because we're all about the rules, or all about, our approach to it. We're in a very fixed mindset, because of the world that we're in. And maybe we don't then see it the way that the muggles see it out there, that are there every day and it's just around them. And maybe we need a translator, and hopefully you'll find that.
It's interesting, and I think that as the more I get into it, the more I'm changing my viewpoint on a lot of stuff, and I've definitely changed my mindset on what instructors should be doing. I think when I first started mooting this idea towards the end of last year, I was very much thinking about what we could do in car. And now I'm thinking I don't need to cover that. I think that the road safety stuff, 90% of it we're doing anyway, especially those that are tackling the higher levels of the goals for driver education and that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's bits we can bring into car, definitely, but I think it's more about what we do outside the car. We may touch on this more detail later on, but I'll mention it briefly now in case we don't. But the example I've used before is the safe system. And I use the road piece example in road pieces about post-crash care. They're not about the other four pillars of that safe system, which challenge myself every time. Can I remember them? Safe vehicles, safe drivers, safe roads, safe speeds. There you go. I'm getting better at that. They're not about the other four. They're about the post-crash care, but they still campaign for the other four.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can come in more as well. We're about the safe road users, that we can campaign and do things for the others. Even with post-crash care, this is I think my best example at the minute, or safe vehicles, sorry. We can be where we used to give advice to learners, or some people used to give advice to learners about buy the cheapest car you can to get your insurance down for a year. We can now change that advice to buy the safest car you can afford. There's stuff we can impact there, but I think my mind is definitely being changed on a lot of stuff on what we can do. And I'm really, as you said with the ADI walk back, I'm looking forward to see where my mindset is in another 10 episodes, especially after my recent one with Sharon Huddleston from Caitlin's campaign, which, if you're of a sensitive disposition, skip past the first 10 minutes of that. It's not an easy listen, that one, because we do talk about what happened, but I felt that was an important episode to get across. But I just wanted to touch and get your opinion on that, Chris, to see what you thought of it so far. And I think that it's one of those things where I've never been about the standards check. I've never been about the driving test. Yes, it gets covered. Yes, it's important, but every bugger does that. What else is important that isn't being covered? And touched before on originality and stuff. Obviously, people have spoke about road safety before, but I can't really think of anyone that's driven, excuse the pun, driven it, looking from both perspectives in that sense. And I'm intrigued to see where it goes. But let's put a pin in that one, and we'll move on. There's a bit more of what I consider it positive news. A friend of the show and friend of mine, Stuart Lockery, has been put forward as the vice chair of the ADI NJC. And this actually excites me a little bit because I've become, Stuart's become a friend of mine over the last year or so. And I hope I'm not putting my foot in it when I say this, but I know a bit how he thinks, I know what he wants, and I know some of the changes he'd like to make. So I think that's definitely a good thing. And I did reach out to him to ask for, he had a quote, and he said, as deputy chair, I want the NJC to play more of a leading role in the industry alongside our more traditional representative role. So a leading role as well as a representative role. That sounds good, doesn't it, Chris?
I'll take that. Yeah. Hopefully we don't get another, lockdown COVID situation for them to prove it. Because we could have done with it then. So yeah, I it's something I've said a lot about all of the associations is they tend to be there to engage with DVSA and then to manage, filter through, challenge all the things that are being led from the DVSA side of things that don't tend to, there's no innovation. No real leadership saying this is what we want to stand for. I'd like to see them more like three political parties. If we look at the NASP association, three political parties where you really know what they stand for, because it's hard to tell the difference between them. There's not a lot of differences. The big one that gets rolled out is that the DIA is commercial. Is more commercial than the others, but that's almost used as a criticism. So I'd like to see more of a, what do you stand for as an association? What are you bringing, so that people can have a choice? Because otherwise they go to them because they feel that they need them, and a lot of the time they don't. So they don't go to them, and they don't get the support that we need them there. Really important that they're there. So I've got a lot of time for Stuart. I don't always agree with him, which I found odd. I thought we were quite aligned, and actually, we've had some conversations where I'm going, no, not even slightly, which is great. I love that. And other stuff that we're very in tune with each other on. So I look forward to seeing how he can do it. It's also, I think, showing that there's a strong voice in Scotland. And I think Scotland, since losing DISC, the Driving Instructor Scottish Council, I think, I think there's been a little bit of a loss in Scotland for having a voice. I think they've benefited from the fact that Peter Harvey is Scottish and in charge of the MSA. But I've just noticed that Stuart seems to be getting a good bit of noise in Scotland, which is a good thing. There's some brilliant instructors out there. They will travel for CPD. It's the biggest thing. We complain about going half an hour down the road, and they'll go, well, yeah, no, it was only local. It was 6 hours away.
Exactly. And I don't know, I'm not saying that it's because he appeared on the Instructor podcast, but he only got the vice chair job after he appeared on the Instructor podcast. So, you read into that what you will. But, just on the associations for a moment, I don't want to dwell on this too much. I think there's subtle improvements. I think that the MSA, I think their social media is getting better.
Yeah.
Communication is, to me, their communication is outstrips the others by a country mile. I think that also the app they've got is really good. I like that. Even the NJC, some of the little things they're doing now, to be fair, to the best of my knowledge, and if someone wants to prove me wrong on this, I will gladly accept that. The ADI NJC were the only association to mention Driving Instructor Day. And oddly enough, that's where then the one negative comment came from. So, but yeah, they were the only ones to mention it, and they're doing slightly different things, like the 10-minute takeaways on YouTube, which again is a little bit different. And also I know they had a webinar, or I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been a webinar recently on how to make our driving lessons fun. So something not as sticky to the standards check and driving stuff. So some good stuff going on there. But while we're mentioning the NJC and Stuart Lockery, let's take a brief moment to mention the conference they had up in Scotland recently, the Scottish one, which was sold out, which is excellent. And by everyone I've seen, it looks like it was a good day had by all. Again, Stuart gave me a comment for this one. He says, in Scotland, we'll be looking to build on the success of last week and hopefully put together an annual event, an event which focuses on growth and improvements of skills within the industry, an event which doesn't require the DVSA. So here's the thing for me. He said that he wants the NJC to be a leading role alongside a traditional role, and the event will, which doesn't require the DVSA. Now, if they're not two statements that don't bring joy into your heart, I don't know what will.
It was the feedback that I heard was the lack of DVSA and the lack of standards check. So those two things, and that actually, do you know what? People still turned up, they still learnt lots, and they went away really happy. You don't have to tick those boxes, and maybe the lack of the lack of those things will then encourage people to think outside that box and go, well, all right, if we don't need them, what do we need? Road safety. I wonder if there's a podcast for that. So sometimes you need things to shift for it to open up another opportunity, and it sounds like they did a great job. If I was in a better situation, I would, time wise and everything else, I was seriously considering going. I hope there's another one next year so I can.
I was hoping to go, and I think I would have potentially gone if we didn't have to do the 6 for 60 at 7:30 p.m. because of the football. Didn't annoy me at all, that. But I am going next year. I will be attending next year. But all the feedback from it was really good, in particular from Gareth Marchant, who Gareth has been on the Green Room before, many moons ago. And I got a lot of time for Gareth. Every now and again, we swap messages. I remember on this episode he came on, it was about the standards check and the triggers. It was around that stuff. I think I pulled him over to my side slightly and he pulled me to his side slightly. It was quite interesting, and he was quite fulsome in his praise. And I think if you get Gareth on side, you must be doing something right. So lots of praise for that. But it was also the MSA conference, which I didn't attend. Again, I knew nothing about. I've heard some nice feedback from that. I know that G. Sabini Roberts was there talking diversity, and I was hoping to go along to catch G talking diversity because I'm a big fan of G, but unfortunately I missed that. Did you hear anything about the MSA? I presume you didn't attend that one, Chris.
I didn't. It's a really odd one. And I should do something about it. I will do something about it. I've never really engaged particularly with the MSA, and I'm not sure why. I think it was one of those. I was a member for the first year of being in the industry, and then it came down to, was I going to pay for the same thing twice with DIA and MSA? And DIA was on my doorstep, and shortly after that I ended up getting lots of work coming through because of that. I was local and useful, so I kind of went down that side of things. That every time I have engaged with them, they've been brilliant. Say Peter Harvey, before him John Lapine. John was so giving of his knowledge, partly because he liked hearing himself talk, but he was always really keen to share the history of, we've tried to do this, we've fought this for this amount of time, or this was what came before, which when you weren't there was very useful, because you kind of had something to research and stand on. So they've been great. I've never massively engaged, and I really should. But I spoke to Harry Debling, who was at the conference, who said it was really good. It was a bit more what you would expect historically from one of these, because of the DVSA were there and such. But they are an important part of the industry, and maybe they should be. And I would, was looking forward to hearing how G got on. I haven't managed to touch base yet because that's great. I'm glad that they were embracing of what G had to say.
Exactly. And do you know what? I'm going to touch on the DVSA thing briefly because I don't have a problem with the DVSA being at conferences. It's just refreshing when they're not, when someone takes that alternative approach. And as you just said with the MSA, no one else is getting someone to talk about diversity. And, it's nice that someone is going for this out of the box thinking now, admittedly, let's be honest, Instructor Podcast Season 1, whatever, that's where you found them. But it's nice that people are taking this varied approach rather than let's just get the DVSA on, then we'll get someone to talk about a standards check, then we'll get someone to talk about a driving test, then we'll send you home with a goodie bag with a pen. It's nice that you're getting that mixture, but we should mention briefly the DIA, their conferences at the end of the year, and they are putting out feelers at the minute. They're asking for suggestions on what they want from the conference. So for the DIA one, go find their posts or email or whatever it was, and you can make suggestions there from what you want from a conference. But one last thing I want to mention before we move on is that the DVSA appear to be pushing their e-learning stuff really, really hard at the minute. So I'm going to ask your opinion on this, Chris, because if you think of the theory stuff as a swimming pool,
yeah,
I dipped my toe in it with a 5-minute theory. I did some one-to-one training. I've done a bit of group training. I do the 5-minute theory podcast, and maybe I paddled in it a little bit. You cannonball into that theory swimming pool and just taking it over. So what do you think of this? The DVSA e-learning that they are? It seems really, really hard selling at the minute to us instructors.
Yes, I'm going to be careful because I don't quite know where I stand. So just cards on table. I consult for, as the DITC, I think, consult for Safe Driving for Life. Because I'm now viewed as competition, I'm not sure if I am still consulting for Safe Driving for Life. I'm waiting to hear. So that is the e-product. So I've got an insight into it and where they're going. I think the thing to remember is it's not the DVSA. It's a partnership deal with TSO, who produce the products, and they are commercial. That's what they do, and it's an acceptable side of the DVSA having a foot in the commercial market because it's licensed. So there's that dynamic we don't always see or think about as instructors. That they are the recognized partners of the DVSA. That's who's producing the product. Some of the products are better than others, and actually, Safe Driving for Life, I rate it. I think it's worth a look. Say that as competition to me. So while you look at Safe Driving for Life, check out Theory Test Explained and compare the two. But I think it's a decent product. If they are saying we should have more involvement in theory, awesome. Bring it on. Absolutely. That's my hymn sheet. They can share it with me if they wish. But that side of things I think is incredibly important. If they're just trying to make money out of pushing it out there and trying to flog something, which is the way it came across, but we don't like to stereotype, but the DVSA aren't the best at communicating. Maybe that was where it went a bit awry, and maybe that's not what they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to say let's do it more. So inside of that bubble of not knowing which way they were approaching it, we just know what we've read. It did feel a little bit like they were flogging something. It was, almost a sponsored email rather than here's the benefits. If it had a flavour of ready to pass, a bit of that about it, of going, as a learner, you should be having understanding, not just knowledge. I might have gone for copyright on that, but they having understanding, not just knowledge on the theory test. So we recommend that you do this kind of style of learning because these are the benefits. I'd have got behind that totally. I'd been sat all day writing blog articles of my own. It didn't come across that way. That's the biggest issue. Maybe it was meant in a different way. I'll as always, we give it a month, don't we? And then we wait and see what they've said next.
First thing I'd say is I think right back from the first episode of the 5 Minute Theory podcast, I've used the term learn and understand the theory, not just pass the test. So I'll cooperate on that. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you've said. I think it feels salesy. I think that's the problem. I'm not seeing any benefit to what they're selling me. And there might be, but they haven't told me it. It just feels like, here, buy this thing. So when the email did come through talking about the Are You Ready campaign and there being resources on there that you can buy, that just felt salesy again. Whereas if I hadn't got the original email that was super salesy, that Are You Ready campaign would have felt better. Now, I appreciate we're now dissecting a marketing strategy, which isn't probably either a speciality, but I think from a customer's perspective, it's just like, stop selling me this stuff. Yeah, by all means, promote it. Of course, that's what you've got to do. You've got to earn money. But tell me the benefits. Tell me what I'm going to get from it. Tell me why I should use this rather than any of the other apps that's out there. Tell me why this isn't just teaching people to pass a test when I could use Theory Test Explained or the 5 Minute Theory podcast or any of the other resources out there that actually help me understand this shit rather than just answering questions. That's what I want from it. And if they're not giving me that, they're not giving me any of that. They're just saying, here's a shiny thing that everyone else does, but we're going to put our name on it and we're going to charge you for it. And that's a bit negative because there is a bit more to it than that, but that's how it feels. And if I wasn't doing it for this podcast, I would have not have read the full email. I'd have given up after paragraph 1 because of that. But either way, let's not get, there's a lot of positive stuff there, so let's not get too bogged down on the one negative, if you like. But we have been recording for 40 minutes, so we might as well take a minute to introduce ourselves. Chris, do you want to tell people who you are, what you do, and where they can find you?
I am, as often is referred to, the man of many hats. So to keep it brief, I specialise in the theory side of the driving instructor world as Theory Test Explained, but I am also the co-founder of the DITC, the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, signposting platform for the industry, trying to point people to where they need to find stuff. Normally it's go and check out Terry Cook's podcast to start with, which makes my life so much easier. Hence I love being here. So yeah, I help join the dots between instructors that are struggling and what I'm loving, the most exciting bit of my job at the moment, the number of what I call pre-PDIs, so people who haven't actually signed on the dotted line yet, who are finding us and getting in touch and asking questions, is on the increase. So that's hopefully saying that we're doing something right, because that was the aim of things. So if you have a question and you don't know who to ask, get in touch and we'll tell you to call the Ghostbusters.
Was it a good film?
It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I've only heard negative things, and I did not like the trailer. So I don't. Anyway, let's not get too bogged down with Ghostbusters. Let's carry on with this because, also a regular guest on the Green Room, which is the Instructor Podcast Green Room. You are a regular guest, not a presenter, not the founder, not the creator, not Chri Bensted podcast. None of those things.
I forgot. Sorry. Highly commended for Content Creator of the Year.
I was getting to that. Who highly commended you, Chris? We should probably mention it. I highly commend you for creating your TikToks because you do not create the podcast.
They get Britain Driving Awards. Yes.
For anyone wondering why there was no, they basically moved the event, haven't they? It was supposed to be in May and they pushed it back to the end of the year. So, but they've done the awards still. Very confusing what's going on there at the minute, which is why I've not spoke about it much. But either way, we are setting the table. So you are listening to the Instructor Podcast Green Room. As always, I am your mediocre and occasional awesome host, Terry Cook. If you enjoy these shows, I'm going to recommend several things. Firstly, sign up to the Instructor Podcast newsletter. That's where you'll get all the information. I'm trying to be more consistent with that. So when there's a new episode drop, you'll get links to that, but you'll also get links to all the things we talk about in the show, plus some like bonus written content from me, as well as over there, I'll be posting more detailed updates on things as well. The best place to find that is there is a link in the show notes, or you can go to the website www.theinstructorpodcast.com and you can check it out over there. Also, go follow the Instructor Podcast WhatsApp channel. That is really good for quick links. So, for example, when Elizabeth Box recently sent me an update on the documentary on the BBC iPlayer, which was Drive Fast, Die Young, which is heartbreaking to watch. If you haven't, go check it out. That was on the Instructor Podcast WhatsApp channel within 15 minutes of it dropping on the iPlayer. And I'm able to do that really quickly over there as long as I'm not on a driving lesson, for example. So really good place to get quick links and the occasional voice note from me as well. So the WhatsApp channel and the email. And I will just mention, make sure you're checking out the Instructor Podcast Premium as well. We do have a free week's trial. So you can sign up for the £10 tier, free for a week. There's over 75 hours worth of content over there, exclusive content. And if you can get through that 75 hours in a week, then great. If not, you can stay signed up because we release new content every month, 3 or 4 editions every month. And we've got a new bonus over there as well, in that all members of the Instructor Podcast now get a 50% discount on their ADI NJC membership, which is another little treat, as long as all the other ones we have as well. But let's move on from that. Just to reiterate, all that stuff is you can find on the website or on the show notes, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. But let's move on, because the highly commended content creator of the year, Chri Bensted, came up with some topics to discuss. What do you want to tackle first, Chris?
I'm just trying to remember what I came up with. I'm just having a quick look at my list. Well, I wanted to mention the disappointing response to the DITC letter that went to everybody, every email address I could find. This really annoying situation where if you want to complain about the DVSA or anything that is connected to the DVSA, whoever you complain to sends it to Loveday Rider to respond. So as much as you want to complain, you're complaining to the person who's the problem or in charge of the problem, or you won't make it about her personally. It's the DVSA that respond. To the point at which we got the same response from 2 different people at the DVSA, word for word, despite having said in the letter, please we get your response from this when we sent it to the minister and everything else. That's not how the government works. So frustrated is probably not enough. I'm not quite sure what else we can do except for keep making some noise. So we'd love to call everybody, that means you, everybody, to send an email to your local MP, really easy to get their email address, and just say 2 lines. I am a driving instructor. I am an ADI, a PDI. It directly affects PDIs. Please, could you read this letter and try and get us a response to it? And just to have explained it, the letter was covering the shortage of tests for Part 2 and Part 3, and the fact that people are committing. I spoke to someone this week. I haven't got permission to share names, so I'll keep that one to myself. But I spoke to someone this week who has given up their job, and they are on a clock because they've only got so much money, because they expected to be able to complete the process in the time that was told to them, by various different big driving instructor trainer organizations. They're not going to be able to get the tests. They're just not there to have. And It's not good enough. There's people's livelihoods on the line, and trainers are being affected as well, because as a trainer, it's really hard to juggle things around. And the more PDIs you've got, the more you are a dedicated trainer, the harder it gets. If you've got one PDI, you can, hopefully find them a slot. If you've got 20 on the go as a single trainer, that's a real challenge. And the answer is that the DVSA have got everybody going back to their normal jobs from the 1st of April, so it'll all be okay. That's how I read it, at least. They use more words. No, it won't, because half of them have left. So we've lost experienced examiners, ADI examiners. You've got to be, I believe, as far as I am aware, until I'm told otherwise, because if they want to communicate to tell me otherwise, please do. You've got to be doing the job for, I think it's 3 years before you can qualify to become an ADI examiner. And you have to want to, and a lot of people don't. So how are they filling that gap when, there's a good few that have left and a good few that are thinking about doing so because of the constraints being put upon them. So we've got a crisis going on. And I just think it's being ignored. It's being brushed under the carpet.
What answer did you want? Now, I don't mean specifically the details of the answer, but what were you hoping for as a response?
I'm not 100% sure, because we've never had it before. I want to feel that we are being listened to. It's not about me being listened to. It's about us as instructors, as an industry, all of us together actually being acknowledged and listened to. And the nearest I can get to it is the beginning of COVID and during COVID, when things changed and we weren't communicated with. But I understood that because I was talking to the DVSA, not stuff I could say publicly, but I was hearing what was going on from them. And I could see the problem was, they were miles apart and having to pass letters backwards and forwards to find the answer. They didn't have those answers. This bit, the bit we're in now, that's their job. They are there to deliver the tests that are not being delivered. That's just failure. I accept why it's happening, but what they're doing is they're addressing the popular L test waiting list, because that's the one that everyone's talking about and everyone cares about. And they're letting us suffer directly. It's not fair. I think I often start from it's not fair. And I don't feel that we are being listened to. I don't think it's an easy answer. But if they want to pay me that money, then I'll start trying to move pieces around. They're being paid to do the job that they're not doing. It's just pure failure. It's not the usual. They're not doing a very good job of it. They're not trying what we think they should try or whatever it might be. It's not that. Straight failure. The service that they are required to deliver is not there. And the response is, well, the pink license is for learning, not earning. But that's not the monetary commitment that's the issue. The issue is they've committed to a process that you are entitled to pass the part 1, then have 3 attempts. You shouldn't need the 3 attempts, but you're allowed 3 attempts. That's part of the rules at the part 2. And then have 3 attempts at the part 3. Good luck, because you can't fit that in the 2-year window that is allowed of you when you pass your part 1. It's just wrong. And I want someone to listen. I want someone to have heard it, because at the moment it's this closed shop approach, which is if I complain to the minister or I complain to my MP, who is the person that I was involved in voting in. I didn't. But anyway, I didn't vote for him, but I don't tell him that because he's being really helpful at the moment. But that's my representative. I didn't vote in Loveday, and do you know what? I quite like her. I think she's really straight talking in a lot of cases. It's the action that I'd like to see, and I think she's in a really difficult position. I almost feel that by shouting to her boss, the minister for transport, by shouting to him, I almost feel like we're doing her a favour, because if they recognise that there's a problem there, or maybe not Loveday, but the DVSA, we're doing a favour to the people there, because it's saying to the people above them, look, they need more help, because we're not actually looking to, cut off people's heads. We're looking to find a solution to a problem that is directly affecting thousands of people, and it then directly affects learners. And whether you like it or not, the PDI process, the learners across the board do suffer by their own choice, because they pick the trainee instructor, and not all trainee instructors are bad. Some of them are amazing. But if they're being let down by a process, they're not able to deliver the best they could be. So those learners, some of them will suffer because of it, which links in with what you're touching on the side of road safety and the risks of young people after they pass their test. We're letting them down. So we don't want to mop it up after it's all gone wrong. Let's try and make it better. Let's change. Let's really totally wipe the slate clean and start over. Let's flip the part 1 and part 2 testing so the qualifying process makes sense. Let's do all of that, but let's get it on the agenda first. So just someone listening would be nice.
I mean, there's never been a better opportunity to completely revamp the system, because, as you said, the system's failing. It's screwed. It isn't working right now. Now, whoever we want to blame is almost irrelevant at this point. It's not working. So it is the perfect opportunity. Well, no, the perfect opportunity was 4 years ago. But as of now, it's the perfect opportunity. And the one thing you are forgetting, Chris, during that, quite epic monologue, to be fair, was the unprecedented demand that has been going on for 4 years. Oh, no, that can't mean it's unprecedented. Anyway.
The demand that we would have got rid of if we'd moved the age of the test to 18. I didn't mention that bit, but I feel I should have.
Or done anything. Literally anything. Whatever idea we could have put in place would have been better than doing nothing, which is what was done. And, I'm not one for dragging up the past too much and going, oh, well, this could have been done different. But it is worth reflecting upon that. But we can't keep beating them with that stick. We need to reflect upon it. We've got to be honest, and we can't dismiss it. We need to look and go, this is where we are now. And if they just cancelled all driving tests, all part 1, all part 2, all part 3, just stopped everything now, that would screw some people over. It would. There's no getting away from that. But I'm going to do this twice this week now. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few and the one. So unfortunately, there will be some people that will be harder off by doing that, by stopping everything for a week. It's probably all you'd need to reset, and then just resetting everything one way or another. However we do that, whether it is taking this opportunity to raise the age by a year, whether it's bringing in a graduated license, whether it's meaning that you cannot book a driving test without a driving instructor's number, or all instructors have to book it, or whatever they decide to do, doing something. And yes, there would be people that will complain the same way people complain about the war on motorists because there's a new speed bump or whatever it is. There will always be people that complain, but sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture and go, but this will fix it long term. And short term's going to suffer a little bit, but it'll fix it long term. At the minute, we are screwed short term, mid term, and long term. So something has to change.
Yes.
I agree with you completely. The letter they got back was nothing short of abysmal. It was, this is what I've said before. You shouldn't be earning money anyway. Bye. And it's like, if you're going to be that callous within it, just do what I said then. Don't waste all the words. If you're going to be that callous in your response to a letter of people that are losing livelihoods, literally, or, losing money, or the stress that this is causing people, then just be callous and be honest about it. And come back with that, yeah, we're not doing it, disagree, tough luck. Just be honest with that. Or I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I've got to say, she can't do this. Referring to Loveday Rider, there's nothing stopping her. Being honest, there's nothing stopping her coming out and saying, "I'm going to say we fucked." She's not going to say that. There's nothing stopping her coming and saying we're failing. We cannot get a hold on this. We are being let down by the people above us, and we are letting you down in turn. You know, the thing stopping her doing that is obviously she'd probably lose a job, for being honest. But you get what I mean? It's just like there has to be a point where someone just says, enough is enough. For me and you, to a degree, it's not that big of a problem, personally. So look at me as a driving instructor. It's not that big of a problem. If anything, it's almost beneficial. It's bringing me working. You know, it makes my job a little harder at times of having to manage students' tests and stuff. But it's bringing me working. I've got this constant flow of work. Even on this podcast, struggling for a topic, there's an easy one we can talk about that people will tune in for every time, you know, and I'm sure you're in a similar boat with that. But we're not thinking about you and me. We're thinking about the industry as a whole. I'm saying it again. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. There you go.
No, absolutely. I just, you know, I would actually quite like Loveday to just appear and just go, "We're fucked." I'd respect that more than the letter that we got in response. I'm still hopeful that we will hear some more. I say we've got a couple of MPs that are banging on the door already, but only you can write to your local MP. So just take a moment. It's an email. You don't need a pen and paper. You don't need a stamp. You can just send it across to them. Copy in the letter, which is on the DITC website, so that you've got context and all the questions on there. Feel free to add any of your own. But if it's time that's the problem, 2 lines will do it. You know, just ask them nicely, because that's their job. And if they do that, this is why we get a response from DVSA, because they have to respond. But we'd like the response that we want to hear. And, you know, a bit of honesty, as you say.
And you never know. With the current incarnation of the government, that currently desperate scrambling for any votes they can, they might see it as a vote winner and actually do something and think, oh, we could pull in an extra 17 votes. We could get the votes of driving instructors. That might be enough to get us a seat somewhere. But anyway, let's not go down that road too much. All right. Is there anything you want to touch on around that, or do you want to move on to one of your next topics?
What? As a related topic, I think, you know, we said about the number of people that are leaving DVSA that were involved in the ADI side of things, and a lot of those are going back to training because they came from a driving instructor background and they came across there. I was just interested because I think my view is skewed. What are your thoughts on the fact that people who were test focused, because that was their job, tests, are entering into what's probably quite an evolved industry from when they left it? Coming into something that has got much more client centered, not necessarily all the way there yet, but we're much more client centered. That we don't focus solely on tests, and I accept we still focus on the test, but there's more of a feeling for, you know, how do you feel, at least, even if that question isn't asked well, it's asked. Do you think that there's potentially a conflict between us and them still, as them are entering back into our side of the fence?
100% there's going to be a conflict there. However, and this is a big however, if I was an examiner or anywhere within that DVSA system and came back into our industry to teach Part 3, standards check, whatever, would I be banging the drum that I was an examiner? 100%. That's there will be people going to them because they've said that, and they are 100% within their rights, and probably right, to do that. I am going to be a little careful what I say because I haven't attended the workshops. So I can't comment on the content they're providing within workshops and within training, because it may be client-centered. It may be really focused around that. My guess is it's teaching people to pass a standards check rather than teaching people to deliver high-quality driving lessons. And the two aren't always 100% in line. I do think that if you're delivering all the competency on the standards check, in theory, you're delivering a good lesson, but there is some grey area there. So do I have a problem with them coming in? No. Do I have a problem with them shouting about the standards check and they used to be examiners? No. Could that lead to problems? Yes, because, as I say, Chri Bensted of the DITC that someone has never seen before, or this examiner that can say, I worked at the DVSA for 10 years and I helped create the standards check that I'd never seen before. Who am I going to? Well, if I'm just looking at them two pictures with no further context, I know who I'm going to. But if I dive further, and this is what I implore people to do, I'm going to Chri Bensted. Bugs me to say that, yeah. But I'm going to Chri Bensted. And so I think that there is a problem there in terms of, by having that extra bit of marketing power, they may be disrupting a little bit. But I also think there's a problem with it. Are they potentially teaching to pass rather than to teach? And yeah, I think there's a potential for a problem.
I having thought this through previously, I then ended up with an interesting thought of, are we now at the risk, especially if they do start changing the qualification process, if they start changing what audit is about, making those changes, are we at a risk of being a certificateless industry? We don't tend to have physical qualifications, on paper qualifications. We tend to go out there and dabble, and we learn as we go, and we find something we're good at and we shout about it. I might just be talking about me, and that's the theory. That's what I love about it. I absolutely enjoy the fact it's an empty room in a lot of ways, and I get to talk to people like Annie Winterburn and other people who are doing a bit more of the theory stuff. There's apparently there's a podcast out there for it as well. I recommend 5 Minute Theory all the time. So yeah, I think we talk about these things and we get to kind of explore it in a way, because it's not been done. It's not how does everyone else do it. It's going, we haven't got a clue. We're going to make it up. How can we make it up best? But that then, if you come across someone who's qualified, whatever that qualified is, even if it's I had a job somewhere, that we end up sort of suffering because we haven't got those bits of paper. But we saw what happened to, at the time, the only provider really that had kind of that accredited foundations to it of tri coaching, and that qualification was recognized by people in the industry. Did it ever really make a difference to your learner choosing you or not? Probably not. It probably made you better. The upskill was there, but not the piece of paper. So I just wonder whether this is what it's doing. The reason that there's some people, and others might not have seen these conversations, but there's some people being very prickly about the questioning of our qualifications, is because actually, as an industry, we've never really valued them. A lot of people have got them. A lot of people have done a lot of training. I'm not saying they haven't, but we haven't valued those pieces of paper. What we valued is the good stuff. I don't care if someone's a Michelin star chef. If it looks pretty, I want it to taste good. It's that kind of approach. I just wonder whether it's shining a light on the fact that maybe what we need to move forwards to touch on all those things that we've spoken about today are some more academic qualifications.
So basically what you're saying is it's not the size that counts, it's what you do with it.
Probably.
Yeah. And I agree. Do you know what? I actually quite dislike it when we agree too much. But I agree, and I think that I think the concern I have, and look, this may be 100% unwarranted concern, but you're right to ask the question. We're right to talk about it. I think the concern I have is that over the last year or so, I feel like I'd seen a little bit of a shift in a lot of people in the way they promote the training. I felt like I'd seen a lot of people shift from standards check to around the standards check. There was less talk of it. There was more talk of learning how to deliver a good lesson. Standards check might still be in there, but it felt like we were shifting away from that. I think my concern is that they're bringing that back. And one of the problems we have, and I don't know if this is an industry thing or this is a general thing, people are often reluctant to try multiple things. So they'll, as I said before, they'll see Chri Bensted, DITC, and they'll see former examiner standards check. Which one am I going to go to without looking too deeply? Former examiner standards check. Mm-hmm. And then they go there and they get this information. Oh, this seems to be working. I'm just going to go here. It's why since day one of this podcast, I've encouraged people to check out other podcasts, because it does two things. It shows them there's other things available. So if this podcast isn't right for them, they will still have something else. Also shows them how good I am, because I still believe I'm the best podcast around. So therefore, if they go to someone that's not as good as me, and this isn't meant as a criticism, but if they go to someone that doesn't produce as good a podcast as I do, it makes me look better. So I think, again, it falls down to us, to me, as a driving instructor, to go, yeah, I'm going to try that, but I'm also going to try that. Then I'm going to try this. Oh, I like this one. I'm going back to this one, but I'm still going to try this thing over here. I think if we take that approach, there's no problem to it. But I think that we have to be careful. Again, I go back to what I've just said. I still encourage people to check out other podcasts, because at least that way, if they don't like mine, they're still going to get some form of audio or video or whatever you're doing, kind of this format. They'll still get something. I don't think other people do that, and that's completely fine, But yeah, I think that's where I sit. That's where I sit. I don't want to go too much on a rant other than that.
It's interesting. It happens to join the dots, and I think sometimes these things are meant to. That I had a conversation earlier from an instructor who said, I've just spoken to so-and-so's pupil and they want me to teach them at the same time as the other instructor. So they want to take us both on as instructors. Two instructors have spoken to each other, decided it wasn't a good idea. They teach differently. And I kind of went, well, the only reason that you wouldn't feel that you could do that is if you didn't feel you could defend your position, or you felt there was an argument against it. Why would that be the case? It's actually our own insecurities that are the issue, which is why when I asked that question, I was very aware that I feel that actually, maybe I feel underqualified sometimes. Maybe that bit of imposter syndrome that comes in, or whatever it might be. I always go back to when, it's a long time ago now, but when I went on Sky News for the first time, and people had this weird way of asking the question of why did they pick you? And it always felt like a criticism every time. But the answer was really genuine. I was the one that said yes. They phoned 9 other people that said no. And it's the thing that I'm quite good at. It gets me into trouble. I say yes quite a bit. I like the idea of an opportunity that it's just going to give me something at the end of it. So I kind of think the same with if you've got 2 instructors training someone, that it's down to that individual to decide who's best, if there is a best, or whose advice they're going to follow. Surely everyone will benefit by that being challenged, but we don't like it. We'd rather shy away from it. So I welcome it. I suppose my thing is, let's all play nicely and see see what comes to the top, and see how growth mindset, which I was reminded of by Starbucks. So thank you, Starbucks.
A couple of things I want to touch on. So I'll use this podcast example again. There are other podcasts out there now that should be blowing mine out of the water because they talk heavily about the standards check, or because they talk about the part 3 or whatever. They should be blowing this out of the water because that's what the bulk, to be fair, the bulk of the industry is still interested in primarily, and understandably so. So my insecurities are quite high at the minute, and I have to fight my own brain every day not to go, well, let's take on something about the standards check. Let's do that every episode because that'll get. But like, no, I'm stick to my guns. And my whole thing is when I feel those insecurities coming up, it's like, right, challenge accepted. Who says I can't do this? Let's go do it. So right, I put the post up recently. I shared the post of when we did the first expert session, or you did the first expert session on the Instructor Podcast Premium on roundabouts, and the fuss that caused. And I can remember someone asking that question, like you just said, what gives you the right to call people an expert? And I'm like, well, average sessions don't sound as good as expert sessions, does it? That's kind of the main reason. There's nothing, and also experts, leaders, innovators, and game changers. It's like, don't sound as good mediocre sessions, and I just think when people challenge you, it says more about them a lot of the time than it does about you. I think there's a difference between someone being inquisitive and someone challenging, or someone wanting to know more and someone confronting. I think there's several different layers to that. And there's space for all, there's time for all. I think there's a way to do it. But I've said this before, there's a list of people that I would come to for training. And part of my thing is I do not want to work with anyone that's going to judge me. And there are certain people, and people will be surprised by this list actually, certain people that I would not work with because I will feel judged. Even though I know they're really good at what they do, I'm not going to them because I do not want to feel judged, because that's where I underperform. And that's where I'll man's up. That's where I would struggle on a standards check. Someone gives me a standards check tomorrow, someone's judging me back. I'm going to underperform on my level. I will be underperforming because I'm being judged. And it's like an extra thing I have to fight in my brain. Doing this sometimes when I do it in front of people, that's hard because I'm being judged, or that's how it feels, so it's all that kind of stuff. It's like, anyway, I'm not going to go too far down that road, but here's a quick one for you, Chris. Tell us about your standards check course. It's not a standards check course. Quickly. 60 seconds. You're used to this. Go.
The grade A course, because the tips in it spell out grade A, because I love a decent acronym, MSPS now. And it doesn't look at the 17 competencies. It looks at how to be delivering a successful lesson, every single lesson. So you don't have to worry about the standards check or your part 3, whichever it might be, because you just deliver awesome lessons every single time.
And I've done it. And I judged you on it because you asked me to. And it was really good. And it is about the standards check, but it's not about the standards check at the same time. So if you want some standards check training, by all means, come to me, but it won't be as good as Chris. I'll hold my hands up now. Go do Chris's grade A standards check course. But we've probably got time to cover one more topic you might want to cover for a few minutes. So what else do you want to touch on today?
I was going to read the standards check tip of the day off the piece of paper that you gave me, but I won't do that now. No, I'll go on from the acronyms. Just that I by accident, which is often where I come up with acronyms. You were struggling earlier with how to remember the safe systems, different things. It spells out RSVP with 2 P's, with roads, speeds, vehicles, people, and post crash. So I think they should use RSVP. So what is, just as a question off the back of that, rather than me just going, aren't I clever, I made up an acronym. What's your favourite driving instructor acronym, and what does it stand for?
This is a question for the Green Room Extra. That will not help me remember it. I still could not. I tried working out earlier after you'd sent me the message. I'm like, hold on, that's going to be roads. I'll tell you what I think works. Acronyms that I can say as a word. So even
Yes.
LOL, when I can say LOL, I can associate LOL with laughing out loud. But I can't say RSVP, whatever. I don't know. I don't think I've got one. I don't like acronyms. I would probably have to say, the one I sent you, it's not driving instructor related, but Norwich.
Yeah, what was Norwich?
Knock us out ready when I come home. It's from Bottom Live.
And you sent it to me. And you sent it to me, which is telling people way more than we promised we would.
I don't like MSM, because I also always think of Microsoft Network from the MSN chart. I don't like MSPSL because I can't remember them all, especially when there's a G in there. I do quite like LADA, but again, I can say it as a word, LADA. Look, assess, decide, act. I quite like that, even though I don't really use it. I like TIP because it's the Instructor podcast as well as the other one that I've forgotten. So yeah, I don't have a favourite, unfortunately. I'd have to go with LADA. That'll probably be the best I could do.
Call yourself a driving instructor, I don't know.
Do you know what? I'm going to chip in, actually, because you threw something else at me during a little chat before when you were suggesting topics for the show about every collision should be preventable. So I'm going to chip in and have a rant about this, because every collision isn't preventable. Every death kind of is preventable. Now, if I'm driving down the road tomorrow and a bolt of lightning strikes my car and I immediately die, then all right, every death isn't preventable. I have to hold my hands up, although I'd be struck by lightning and not be able to. But I would now hold my hands up and say, yes, okay, in that very unique, very specific exception to the rule, and you should know that with your discussions around the highway code, the exception to the rule, it is an exception to the rule. Not every single death, but that's not a road death. That's an accident of a lightning bolt. Where I think I annoy people is when I talk about we can almost always do something to prevent a collision, which then would lead further to injuries and fatalities. Mm-hmm. There are examples of when we can't. So if I'm going around a roundabout and someone next to me decides to turn into me, there's very little I can do. Very little. However, it's preventable by them. In the main part, again, we can put all these little ads on, like, what if they had an heart attack? Yes, we can look for the extreme scenario. But in the main part, collisions are preventable almost every occasion by one person in that collision. Mm-hmm. But then we can go beyond that. And this is where the safe system comes in. Safe roads, safe vehicles, So the safer your vehicle is, even if you get into a collision, the less likely it is to be serious or a fatality because your vehicle is safer. If the roads are safer, i.e. less potholes, you're less likely to have a collision. So the roads are safer. So all of this stuff is reducing it. And then even if at the point of having a collision and that result in a serious injury, for example, potential fatality, that's where post-crash care comes in. So if the government is underfunding the local fire brigade in a certain area, and then there's a collision or a tree falls on a car, and then the fire brigade can't get there. Well, if the fire brigade had been funded better and they had more staff, they may have been able to get there to prevent that fatality. So all of this safe system comes into play. It's not just about us going, well, we can teach people to drive better. It's making the road safer, making the speed safer. Now, whether you do that blanket, as Wales have done, whether you do it on an individual basis, another discussion. But it's about making the speed safer. It's about making the road safer. It's about making drivers safer. It's about making vehicles safer. And then as the last resort for when those occasions do occur, that a genuine accident happens or someone makes a mistake with their driving, well, you've got the best post-crash care. And it's also not about clicking his fingers and going, right, well, that's sorted tomorrow then. It's about having the goal of 2050 of having zero road deaths. That's 26 years away. We're in the state of technology now that we've never seen before. We've got things that protect us in cars and help cars. Do you know what? I'm obsessed with my cruise control at the minute. It's not the biggest safety feature, but it's so helpful.
Yeah.
And it helps me drive, and it's helping my learners drive as well. And it's like, we've got this state of technology now. Why can't we bring more of this in across? Well, we can. We are bringing more of this in across the last 26 years. So for me, anyone that complains about that being a goal of 0 road deaths, I ain't got time for. Because to dismiss it as, yeah, well, accident has happened. Yes, we have to accept there could be that one random bolt of lightning, or someone could have a heart attack while driving. But again, that's where the post-crash care comes in. And on the very, very rare example that heart attack happens and it's instantaneous, or the bolt of lightning instantly kills me, well, we have to accept that will happen now and again. But we can't make it vision zero except for lightning strikes. You know, it needs to be focused on that 0. And is it doable? Yes, if people get behind it, if there is will. And I'm going to have one more little rant, because this is the problem. It's not easy. Here's the best example I can give you. The 2 episodes that are out so far of this podcast. Episode 1, why don't driving instructors embrace the road safety sector? Then in brackets, why doesn't the road safety sector embrace us?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was my 3rd most downloaded episode ever in the first 24 hours. 2nd episode, title, distracted driving. Why is hands-free devices just as bad as hands-held devices? Nowhere near the same numbers. It's not as sexy. Now, you can put that down to me as a title, and maybe I didn't promote it as well, but it's not as interesting. But it just shows you where people's thoughts are, because I'll tell you what, the feedback on that episode has been amazing. The people that have listened to it have come back with some awesome feedback for me, and they've taken away from it. And I think that's the problem. It's too easy to go, well, not as many people listen to this one, so I'll never do it again. The same way we've just spoke about, I'm doing this course and not as many people turned up, so I'm going to have to call it a standards check course. So yes, for the people that moan and complain that, oh, well, Vision Zero's never this, and Terry complains because he says that we should always prevent collisions. Oh, well, yeah, we should in the most part. He's supposed to be a qualified driving instructor. The last thing I'm going to say, then I'll let you come in, Chris. The last thing I'm going to say, I mentioned before about Driving Instructor Day, and I mentioned about the one negative comment. There were more than one negative comment. They were there on the post from WeBuyAnyCar.com and Liverpool Echo, from the public and the public's perception of driving instructors. No, they're not talking about the perception of people listening to this podcast. They're talking about the people that go and bang on about how it's safe to use a mobile, it's just illegal, so don't do it. That's what the public see. That's where we have a negative image, not the good instructors that are taking this stuff and just getting demoralized. But there you go. Like, that felt like a 12-minute rant for a question you didn't ask me. So anything you want to touch back on there?
I agree. I think everything you said makes a lot of sense. What it made me think about was the Disney approach to stuff. It wasn't, we can't do that. It was, if we could do that, how would we get there? And it's about not saying, no, that's wrong. And I liken that, particularly for any PDIs that are listening. I think it's equally true for ADIs, as to when you ask a pupil a question, they don't give your answer. So you go, no, and then you give your answer. Their answer was absolutely valid, and it wasn't wrong, but you've just said it was. And actually, if we approached it with that growth mindset, with that can do, or at least what's going to give us an opportunity to go towards a successful result, it might not be the whole move, but it's part of that move, then that's going to help. And the thing that I'm taking from you, which I think I can still develop my understanding and approach to, is that we are stronger together, and that actually not just focusing on our problems, but embracing other people's problems and saying, no, I should still stand up and fight for the fire brigade that aren't funded, or all of those other things, rather than going, doesn't might make my day better. Do you know what? It might. So unless they're asking for something inherently evil, then put your name on that piece of paper. Shout about it, include it in your everyday as a value, and then maybe all of those kind of that it will continue with Disney. The one with the house with the balloons. That if you've got enough balloons on the house, it will take off the ground, and it will fly, and we will get to where we want to. So if we all add our balloons, and I'm still trying to remember the name of the film. Up. There are 2 letters. I was on If, and I'm like, that's not right. That's the new film coming out. Anyway, I'll review that on later Green Room. In Up. If there weren't enough balloons, it wouldn't have taken off. So squirrel.
Chri Bensted review section. The last thing I'll say on that then is I put the post out for the podcast on Sunday, and that post got 3 likes. And I don't think it got shared. It got shared today, actually, by Emma Cottington, with a lovely write around with it, that she actually promoted better than I did, to be fair, with her write around. But 3 likes, that's demoralizing. Now, I'm not asking people to like it. It's my job to make people like the post and share the post. So I'm not asking people to do it because I've said this, but it is demoralizing when it takes you 10 hours to do something and then you put it out and it gets that response. And then today I put a post out saying, just check on other instructors, make sure you're okay, hope you're all okay. And it gets like 50. That took me 2.5 minutes. And that's just life. That's just the way social media is. I can make a meme that will get the highest amount of likes ever, offend plenty of people as well, but get the highest amount of likes ever. But the 10 hours worth of content creation doesn't get noticed. And I think that's just the last little message I want to get across to people. So if you're putting out the road safety stuff and it's not getting the same traction, it's because it's not sexy. It's not, people don't want to read it. But they will see it, and eventually they will read it. So put it out with your other stuff as well. Keep doing your other stuff. But every now and again, drop in that thing. It won't get the same traction, just won't. But it will get some, and you never know who you're influencing. So that's the last thing I want to mention. So do you want to take a moment just to remind people where they can find you, Chris?
Yes, they can find me at the DITC, theditc.co.uk for any questions that you have. I welcome the challenges. Let's make April not the 1st of April, because I won't answer any of them on the 1st of April. Let's make April the month in which people ask me questions that make me have to think hard. Bring it on.
I like it. And yes, you can find all my stuff at www.theinstructorpodcast.com and go and sign up to the newsletter and the WhatsApp channel. But for now, let's just keep raising standards.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.